We move on to our third speaker, Anne Crémieux, who is an associate professor at the Université de Paris Nanterre. She has published Les cinéastes noirs américains et le rêve hollywoodien. She has also supervised an issue of CinemaCon dedicated to les minorités dans le cinéma américain, and another issue of CinemaCon devoted to Africultures, Homosexualités en Afrique. She also co-edited with Xavier Lemoine Understanding Blackckness Through Performance, L'Amérique des images, Religion en série, and Chantiers d'Amérique. She's also written many articles from Africultures, GRAAT Online, Transatladintica, TV series, and other journals. So today, this is about Orange is the New Black and Intersectionality is the New Black.
Yes, so I hope, I don't know if I'll have time to say everything I prepared, but Orange is the New Black. So TV series and ensemble cast films increasingly not only represent diverse populations, but they tackle specific intersectional issues and delve into their political and social ramifications. This is becoming the norm in a way. TV series Orange is the New Black is based on Piper Kerman's 2010 book about white woman convicted of smuggling drugs into the country for her lesbian lover 10 years after the fact. In the meantime, she had put her past behind her and never mentioned to her loving fiancé, a man named Larry, who supports her throughout the 13-month sentence and marries her upon her release. That's in the book. The book warmly thanks my husband, Larry Smith, whose ferociously stubborn love sustained me and without whom I would not have written this book. In the book, lesbian relationships are rare, and most lesbians are said to be gay for the stay. Yet, the book never discounts Piper's past lesbian relationship with Nora, never expresses homophobia, and regularly attempts to explore racial and social issues in prison, and does include a few intense moments about each of the women Piper meets. Although the autobiographical book focuses primarily on Piper, with a little backstory on the other inmates, Jenji Cohen, the woman who created the series, was inspired to make it into an epic drama about a multitude of characters, most of which are introduced in the book. She is often quoted saying she used the autobiographical character Piper as a Trojan horse to hoax producers into investing in stories that are believed not to sell by using a relatable access point that appeals to the mainstream demographics that producers are after. Orange is the New Black was conceived, marketed, and received as a vehicle for voicing and delving into intersectional issues. Over its 7 seasons, the show has included perhaps more poor non-white female characters than any other show in the history of American TV, along with an equally diverse spectrum of white male and female characters occupying positions of continuity with the inmates and contrast. It writes a new chapter in the representation of lesbianism in prison, with tropes such as the pushy bull dyke and the abusive guards, both male and female. But it's also a story about love, friendship, and solidarity between women. The inclusion of a transsexual woman who appears late in the book, she's Sophia in the series, and she's played by Laverne Cox and her twin brother Mark Lamar in flashback. This inclusion was also an attempt to question the treatment of individuals according to their needs within the series. She becomes the target of transphobia, first from the prison hierarchy, who refuses to deliver hormones, and then from other inmates with an attack. That is an important moment in the series. But she, in the end, is less than adequately protected by the hierarchy, since she ends up spending almost an entire season in SHU, which is it's solitary, right, holding unit, thank you, housing unit. And she is sent to the SHU for her own protection. But she stays there for too long, both within the narrative and outside the narrative. She does seem to be sent there by the series. The series also develops the storyline of her wife and son, which introduces the issue of parenting and transsexuality. In the end, she takes a plea deal instead of standing with the wrongfully accused black inmate Tasha Washington. She's not the only one, but she's black, which the series has established as logical given her outsider status in a large part of the narrative. The show remains centered on Piper and drastically expands on the narrative ramifications of her criminal past by reuniting her with her former lesbian lover and partner in crime. At the end of the very first episode, Alex Voss is sent to Litchfield, where Chapman is incarcerated, while in the book they meet only when they are summoned to testify against their former drug boss towards the end of Piper's sentence. At the same time, over the course of seven seasons, which cover much more than the 400-page book, characters who are hardly delved into the book, including Sophia Bursett, who's based on Vanessa, who's only is mentioned twice in the book, as well as most other black inmates, including Tasty, Poussey, Black Cindy, Suzanne, and many Latinas, including Gloria, Daya, and her mother, Aleida Diaz. Generally speaking, all the characters are expanded upon, in keeping with TV narrative's very essence, as a character-driven long narrative that requires many twists and turns, including the reversal of first impressions about minor characters, who should not be too quickly judged. That's the principle of a series. And it's also a breeding ground for intersectional seeds. The use of backstories developed in flashback sequences is a classic trope of character development in TV series and a potent tool of intersectional narrative probing. For example, and I could take a lot of examples, there's Lost, with a lot of flashbacks that tell us what happened to the characters, trying to understand what happened to them. This Is Us, with the flashbacks about the family history, and Friends, with funny facts about the past lives of the six main characters. Orange is the New Black was at first hailed for its diversity and quickly criticized for its inability to represent relatable, sensitive, intelligent characters of color. This 2013 New York Times article praises the show for including a lot of unknown Black and Latina actors, yet focuses more on the more famous white actors, who at first are indeed, at least for me, the most relatable, if only because Daya is too quiet and Suzanne is too crazy. During the first couple of seasons, feminists and intersectionally minded people started to criticize the show for its unequal representation of people of color, as opposed to the white protagonists whose stories were foregrounded, even though they were the least interesting. This article quotes another article by our Bogado in The Nation, and both make valid points. I was myself struck by the shallowness of the Black characters, and frankly, the difficulty to relate to them compared with the main characters, who at first are not only Piper, but also Alex, Red, Nikki, Pensatucky, and the white COs and wardens. In other words, very predominantly the white characters on the show. But TV series, when they're successful, last for more than one season. And although we as scholars tend to study them once completed, audiences tend to appreciate them as a series of seasons. And they might even advise you to skip or speed watch a season to get to the more interesting next one. So at first, Orange is the New Black offered some pretty stereotypical representations of the underclass that the privileged white felon Piper Chapman had to navigate in, and it was this fish out of water drama. But moving from one season to the next, the show delved into each character. And one example to me is Tasha Washington, Tasty. In the book, Tasty is delicious, and she's only mentioned in passing in a few scenes that are actually reproduced in the series for most of them. Here's one that was criticized, and it's exactly the same one in the book.
You got them TV titties. They stand up on their own, all perky and everything.
And this job fair is also in the book. And at first, Tasty is very stereotypical in the way she seems to just enjoy life in spite of the circumstances. She's smart, but she tends to trivialize everything. Yet from season 1 to season 7, Tasty evolves drastically, especially after her best friend's murder at the very end of season 3. I'm going to spoil everything in case you haven't seen a series, and the riot that ensues. In season 4, Tasty soon becomes the inmates' most articulate and political focused spokesperson, coming up with a list of grievances which involve demanding Cheetos, but it's something that the other inmates absolutely want to put on the list. Her increased political consciousness is gradual and made plausible by the show's length. She appears in all but 2 of the 91 episodes, and not unlike Crazy Eyes, who gradually becomes better known as Susan, Tasty becomes Tasha Washington as she matures as a character. The plot line of her becoming friends with Posey is set to mark her rise in political awareness. Here's a scene from season 2.
Amanda has a theory that it's all because of the cycle of poverty and the bad schools and the government cheese and because I'm brown and my mom was on crack. But I think it's because I was just being an asshole. I thought you said no mushy shit.
And so in this scene, she refuses to be political, but everything is there. And if you watch what comes after, she continues to joke about the sex scenes in the book Outlander, which she recommends to Poussey. But she says that instead of the handsome Highland warrior, she would go after, if she went back in time, a Nubian king. So even though she's yet to question the system, the scene does question cultural hegemony and the lack of black stories in the books in the library. And this is done through a number of characters, including Janae, who in flashback remembers taking a tour of a privileged high school to discover they are putting on a high-end production of Dreamgirls, in which a white teenager in an afro plays Effie, which makes Janae cry. And Courtney, who's giving her a tour of the school, thinks it's because she's moved. This second flashback is caused by Janae questioning Tasty's communication strategy in the riot, which mirrors the show's own strategy. In this scene, the black women have actually bought Judy King as a slave at a slave auction that was organized by white supremacists in the prison, inmates, and they want to use her to carry a message to the outside.
All right, so now, ladies, what would you like me to say? We get thrown into the shoe arbitrarily. We're denied proper health care, dental. I saw a girl with a tooth gone septic, and they still didn't take her to the doctor.
We get beat for no reason. We get cavities searched for no reason. We stuffed 4 in a bunk like we factory chickens. We can't get clean half the time because there ain't enough bathrooms. We fed slop. We don't get paid for our labor. We denied education. We denied the chance to breastfeed our babies. We denied basic humanity. And we get killed in the cafeteria for no reason.
You got a pen?
That's
Can't let
Janae.
this white woman speak for us. She needs to take our stories out her mouth. Come on, man. I know you saw them people out there with them Judy King signs. They want to hear from her. And it would be smart of us if we put her out there. They'll hear more of what we're saying if it comes from her mouth. Yeah, but she's never been a real prisoner a day in her life. She ain't in mourning. She ain't outraged. This is our fight team. Ours and Crusades. You ain't let some fucking white woman like karaoke our song. It's fun. I got this.
You get to keep the laptops? No, we keep them.
So the word karaoke directly refers to the Dream Girl sequence that's coming right afterwards. In this scene, when the black woman speaks, when she says we, she means everybody. And Poussey Washington could have been white if you've seen the scene. It was a mistake by the guard. He didn't mean to kill her. The flashback gives Janae's speech about not letting the VIP inmate speak for them another dimension due to her specific intersectional position as a black lower-class woman. Janae does not believe they will win in the end. She never believes they will win. Not necessarily because they're using the wrong strategy, but because they cannot win. As they are walking Judy King outside, Janae again has a flashback, which again connects their fight against the prison industry and racism and classism in America. Her younger self questions her teacher after the visit and says, "What is the point of playing a game that is rigged?" In the end, Tasha Jefferson speaks as Tasha Jefferson, says Poussey Washington's name because her name can never be said enough, fighting for the visibility of black victims and female black victims of police violence to eventually stop Judy King as she is starting to speak. She will not be speaking for us because Judy King can't speak for the inmates of the prison. She was kept separate from us, and moments after our friend Poussey Washington died, was murdered by a guard doing nothing wrong, Judy King was packing her bags to go home on early release because she's rich and white and powerful. Tasha then introduces her plea for the demands they have listed by saying our fight is with a system that doesn't give a damn about poor people and poor brown people. Although it's a comedy for the most part, or maybe a dramedy, the show consistently weaves the complex responsibility of injustice and discrimination around the institutions rather than individuals, for a new approach to social change in America. The inclusion of two wardens that unsuccessfully try to make a difference also serves that purpose. The decentering phenomenon was as much due to the narrative merits of the series as to its receptions, and fan art clearly shows this by decentering Piper Chuck. This is not fan art. This is marketing, which I should have shown you, and this is the series itself, right? Almost all of Netflix marketing puts Chapman at the center, and so do the first few seasons. Until change comes with the riots. The racial clans are portrayed, both in the marketing and in the story. Here you see a key moment in the riots, and the two clans are separate. But during the riot, the white women are on the outside, waiting for the whole thing to blow over. The fan art either initiated or reflected this, I don't know. Here are many illustrations in 3 slides of the fan art where Piper is never at the center. And that's the most of what you find on the internet. She's never at the center. I believe the intersectional discourse at the core of the series was significantly processed and remediated by its fans and may even have enhanced it. For clearly, as things became gradually more political and also more dangerous and life-threatening, Orange is the New Black focused on specifically racial issues and discentered its look, even though Sophia Bursett was sent to the show. The capacity of the series to illustrate personal feelings through flashback, to devote an entire season to a week-long riot, and to show how Tasha Washington is going to hit a wall, really not only achieves the classic reversals of relationships and personal choices that long narratives are built on, but it also reverses the show's political agenda through metafictional reflections on its very premise, that of using a white middle-class inmate to infiltrate the story of many more. I showed you this slide a little too early, but fans did say that Tasty was the real hero of Orange is the New Black. I can't say I disagree. I would say that Sophia is a close second, but I would add that the main issue of the series is really the privatization of the prison industrial complex and its consequences on the inmates' conditions, climaxing in the riot following the murder of Poussey Washington, a black, lesbian, highly educated inmate. Thanks to the popularity of the show, Poussey's death at the end of season 4 was allowed a 3-season-long resolution, and that explored every character's relationship to the murder, the riot, and its aftermath. And the show launched a fund that is still active to donate money to organizations devoted to the support of women in prison. The 7th season introduced the pressing issue of under the Trump administration of undocumented workers serving time before being deported. The addition of the ICE detention center with its terrible living conditions and extreme promiscuity in the 7th and final season put Litchfield inmates in a new position of privilege. The intersectional position of disempowerment and undocumented women of color was at the center of Kimberly Crenshaw's 1994 paper, Mapping the Margins. 2 main stories are developed, with Maritza Ramos on the right, who believes she was put under ICE detention by mistake only to find out she was born outside the US, but she never knew it, and Blanca Flores, who because of new policies is immediately deported upon her release after serving her sentence. La double peine qu'on a aussi en France. With these storylines in parallel to Tasha Jefferson sticking to her non-guilty plea and getting sentenced for life for a crime she did not commit during the riot, season 7 weaves several intersectional arguments in regards to people of color and undocumented or foreign-born Latinos. Thank you.